Hello there. Thanks for taking a few minutes to stop by. I hope your day has been peaceful, or at least calm enough to hear a good story. If you're lying down or looking for something to relax your mind, then you're in the right place. Because tonight's story is one that no one has dared to tell before. You've heard of the Egyptian pharaohs, right? Kings of kings, ultimate power, blah blah blah. But honestly, being a pharaoh is worse than being an office worker with air conditioning. I'm not joking. You'll see soon enough. Oh, and if you're into those laugh so hard you sweat kind of stories, be sure to drop a like. And if it's your vibe, subscribing doesn't cost much energy. Definitely less than building a pyramid. Alright, turn on your fan, get comfortable, and comment where you're from and what time it is, because the story is starting. You think being a pharaoh is the pinnacle? With thrones, pyramids, and crowds bowing down to you? Sounds fancy, but it's not as fun as you'd think. Being a pharaoh means being watched 24/7 by the gods. Every move must follow omens. Dream of a snake, and you'll spend the whole day fearing assassination. Wake up to chanting, fall asleep next to a pile of offerings. And the food is fine unless someone poisons it. Oh, and you don't get to choose who you marry, because chances are you'll marry your sister, or your cousin, or both. And if you survive past your 20s, congrats. You'll be buried in a pyramid with 300 ceramic jars. But sadly, a few thousand years later, someone will dig you up, make a movie, and call you Tutankhamun. That kind of ending's too funny, so now, let me take you through what it's like to actually be the king of Egypt. Imagine this: you are a pharaoh. Every morning you open your eyes, not because you slept well, but because chanting starts at 5 a.m. People are praying for you, or asking the gods to forgive you for sneezing at the wrong time yesterday. You're not allowed to yawn, or look tired, because at least 3 fortune tellers are watching you. They don't ask what you want. They ask the stars and say you should eat iris root porridge instead of honey today. You want to stand up, but you have to wait for a servant to pour blessed hand-washing water, sanctified by a priest last night. You haven't even washed your face, and the high priest is already giving a morning speech about the dream you had. Because pharaohs don't have personal dreams. Every dream belongs to the nation. If you dream of a flood, it means one is coming. If you dream of a cat, the goddess Batet is telling you to reflect on your behavior. And if you dream of dying, sorry, today you're not allowed to step out with your left foot first. Every action must be interpreted, and even silence is seen as a message from the beyond. You eat breakfast in a heavy atmosphere, not because of the heat, but because everyone's waiting for you to offer thanks before your first bite. You bow your head, touch the bread, then remember it's a holy day, and you can't eat in front of the statue. So you stand up, move your seat, face the Nile, and repeat a prayer you've known since age 5. Behind you, someone is taking notes on how you chew, so they can later write, "The pharaoh ate with a contemplative demeanor, as if speaking with the ancestors." You can't just go for a walk. First, you must complete the sunrise presentation ritual before the sun god. In front of the statue, you'll be fumigated with incense, anointed with perfume, and recite 9 short prayers and 3 long ones, without a single mistake. If you mess up, don't worry, just start the ceremony all over again. It only takes another hour, plus a few more suspicious looks from the priests. Sometimes you wonder if the gods are really that needy, but you don't say it out loud, just in case that god actually is listening. So you stay silent, like every day, and move on to the 8th ritual. Time to read the stars. They bring out 4 clay models of planets and discuss your fate based on the tilt of Saturn. One priest says today is a good day to grant pardons. Another says it's a sign of rebellion. You nod, even though you don't understand a thing. But you're the king, so you must appear wise. Finally, you're allowed to change clothes, but make sure it matches the prophecy from last night's dreams. Wearing the wrong robe might be seen as offending the god Sobuk, and Sobuk has crocodiles. When the sun is high, you're finally allowed to step out into the courtyard. For what? To chant yet another prayer. This one's the oath to maintain cosmic order. In front of the entire court. Feeling tired? Don't say it. Fatigue is a sign of disrespect. Hungry? That's fine. Just 3 more minor rituals before lunch. A servant leans in and whispers that the sky is cloudy, which is considered a bad omen. You look up, see no clouds, but you must pretend to be concerned because the court is watching for your proper reaction. You cough lightly. A priest turns and says, "It could be Thoth warning us of inner turmoil." And just like that, an emergency council is called because you had a stuffy nose. By now, you've gone through nearly 4 hours of rituals, omens, and recitations, yet have accomplished nothing for the country. And you realize something: being pharaoh means acting like a god, all day long, even when all you want is to sit quietly, eat fully, and take a proper breath. But even breathing must be done in rhythm, lest people say you're sending wrong signals to the universe. Maybe you're starting to miss your 21st century bed. Back then, all you had to do was get up, brush your teeth, and turn on some music. No one made you pray at sunrise. After all the rituals, you're rewarded with your formal morning outfit, made of the finest linen from Upper Egypt. Soft, but also see-through, thinner than divine promises, and absolutely not sunproof. You think wearing gold is luxurious? Not really. The golden bands around your neck are as heavy as ritual chains. With every step, you hear clinking sounds, as if you yourself are a ceremonial bell. Under the thin robe, your skin sticks with sweat, sand, and perfume soaking into your pores. And don't ask why you're itchy. Lice don't need an invitation, because when you're pharaoh, everyone wants to be near you, including parasites. On your shoulders rest divine symbols. Under your arms, the sweaty truth. You can't complain. The robe is woven from consecrated linen. But consecrated doesn't make it any cooler under 46 degrees Celsius sun. The crown on your head, symbol of authority, and weighs nearly 3 kilograms. Wear it for 6 hours and you'll understand the price of glory. And neck pain. That gemstone necklace is beautiful, but also cold, cracked, and scrapes your skin every time you bow. The attendants help dress you, but they won't help you scratch your back. And you are itchy, very itchy, in places you can't scratch. Someone offers you the scepter of power, gorgeously carved, but greasy with sheep fat and slippery. And just like that, you look like a display item, too stiff to sit properly, too afraid to lift your arms high. Every time you sweat, guards spray more perfume, turning your skin from damp to sticky. There's no electric fan, no cotton fabric. You're soaked like after a bath, but can't bathe, because the next prayer ritual is only 20 minutes away. A priest approaches, checks the color of your robe, and nods. Perfect for today's divine weather. You're not sure whether to cry or ask to change clothes, but you're the king, and kings don't change robes just because they itch. A king simply stands still, smiles, and lets his skin redden under sacred sunlight. Meanwhile, flies circle trying to find a weak spot. Someone brings you wooden sandals, limited edition with Horus carvings. They look great, but your heel is still blistered from last week's ceremony. After a few steps, the pain shoots up to your neck. You sit down on a stone throne. No cushion, no backrest. Ancient Egyptian thrones weren't made for sitting. They were made for looking majestic. You try to shift positions, but the linen around your waist is glued to your skin. A small scratch on your neck starts to sting, thanks to your jewelry rubbing since sunrise. You raise your hand to scratch and remember, no scratching while wearing the crown. So you lower your hand and let the itch become a sacred act of endurance. The priests call it the patience of a ruler, but you call it holy torment in silence. And just when you think you've adapted, a golden strand from your wig falls into your collar. You do nothing because you're pharaoh, and the itch is fate. After 3 hours of rituals, it's finally time for breakfast. On the table, leavened bread, barley beer, a few slices of goat cheese, and some honey, the premium menu of that era. You sit upright, solemnly, and recite 3 prayers before chewing. But when you bite into the bread, it's as hard as a temple floor tile. They call it divine offering bread, but you call it dental investigation. The cheese smells like someone has been mourning over it too long. The beer is warm, chunky, and stored in a clay jar with no lid. Something just swam across it? Unclear, but you still drink because you're king. One sip of beer, two shudders, three mental notes. Guess everyone drank this back then. You look around, hoping for some vegetables or fresh fruit. Nothing. They say the gods don't eat much, and neither should you. You try to finish the bread while flies buzz around your head. One lands on your lip. You wave it off, only to be reminded, don't show emotion during ritual meals. You force a smile, and remember, you're still not allowed to go to the toilet, because pharaohs don't go like commoners. A purification rite is required before the act. You inform the priest that you need to cleanse your body. They understand and guide you to the back of the temple. It's not a restroom. It's a stone chamber, dark, cramped, with a small hole in the floor. No door, no lid, no water. You sit down. Well, not quite sit. You try to balance over a time-worn rock slab. The smell in there feels like generations of gods have left their spiritual marks. No toilet paper, just some reeds, or if you're lucky, a few sanctified palm leaves. You don't dare ask what toilet paper is. That concept won't exist for another 3,000 years. You finish the ritual and stand up, not in the proudest posture. No soap, just wood ash and a servant with a blank stare. You tell yourself, I'm the embodiment of Horus. Then you take a deep breath and realize your hands smell nothing like a god. You step outside trying to look regal, but deep down you just want a roll of silk tissue and a warm toilet seat. You mocked the cloudy beer earlier. Now you crave clean water so badly it hurts. But you can't cry. Tears are a sign of weakness and could be seen as a bad omen. A priest walks up. Is your majesty's stomach at peace? You nod, while silently praying no one discovers your recent spiritual event. You return to the main hall. The scent of incense thankfully masks what you're trying to forget. Someone hands you a date. You look at it like it's a divine miracle. You bite gently, chew slowly, and thank the gods you don't have to return to the purification chamber. Part of you wants to run back to an era with smart toilets and autosprays. But another part knows the day has just begun. Because as pharaoh, you don't just represent the people. You represent the divine digestive system. And that system doesn't come with many choices. You take another deep breath. This time, it's the scent of lunch being served. And you know, every nightmare begins with an empty stomach. Being pharaoh means you get to choose your wife. But wait, only within limits. Tradition says only those of royal blood are worthy of marrying the king. And royal blood flows within a very small and very withered family tree. Result, your sister, your cousin, your niece, any of them could be marriage candidates. There is no romance, only bloodline preservation. Marriage here isn't about love, it's about lineage. When servants announce your engagement, you must ask, full sister or second cousin? Some pharaohs married 2 or 3 women at once, and all 3 called your mother aunt. You look at the family dining table, and no longer know who to call wife, who to call sister, or who to call both. But that's fine. Egyptian family gatherings were never simple anyway. You have a child. That child looks like you, disturbingly so, because they're your child, your grandchild, and the niece of your wife who is also your sister. And this is considered normal, even sacred, because they believe divine blood should never be diluted. But to you, it feels like your brain is starting to thicken. You're told stories of past rulers who married their own daughters, and you don't know whether to be shocked or to brace yourself for your turn. When your queen gives birth, priests will check whether the child bears divine markings. If not, it means you might have married the wrong branch. And if the child does have divine signs, congratulations. You've just created a new candidate for yourself. You try asking about marrying outside the royal bloodline. The answer, no. Commoner blood weakens the state. You look out the window and see a beautiful, strong woman, not related to you, but you're not allowed to stare. Staring offends the goddess Isis. That evening, you dine with the queen. She talks about her school days, with you because you were classmates and shared a father and shared the same priest for prayer classes. You fake a smile. The bread gets stuck in your throat. You recall a priest once said, "Inbreeding creates strong blood." But you also remember Tutankhamun died before turning 20, with deformed feet and a twisted spine. You look in the mirror and start to see a bit too much of your ancestors in your face. They paint your image on the wall with perfect proportions. But no one paints recessive genes. You don't protest, because protesting means defying the gods. You quietly retrace your genealogy and realize you're the result of 6 generations of looping back. You're exhausted, but you say nothing, because your sister, also your wife, is pregnant. People ask if you prefer a son or daughter. You just hope it's healthy. But the priest says, if it's a girl, she'll marry a prince from the side branch, who also happens to call you uncle. You hear that and leave your meal unfinished, because one more bite could mean a week-long headache. That night, you dream of your family tree, wrapping around your neck like a snake. You wake up gasping, only to be told, today is a good day to discuss marriage with your future daughter-in-law. You don't ask who she is, because in your house, no one can answer that question quickly. And you realize you don't need a geneticist. You need a new branch to breathe through. After morning rituals, food, and a few badly timed breaths, you're sent to the royal harem. Sounds peaceful, but the harem strains your neck more than the throne. You have to keep turning your head to make sure no one's looking at you with poison in their eyes. There are dozens of women there, all beautiful, all smiling, all with reasons to hate you. Some are women whose names you forgot. Some were sisters of your wife, now wives themselves. Some married you due to omens. Some due to political deals. And none truly love you. Each has a family, a goal, and a priest standing behind her. You don't have lovers. You have power blocks that wear makeup and smile politely. You walk into a room and are poured scented water, but you dare not drink it. A bird died in the garden yesterday. Could be a sign, or a warning. You sit, speak gently. One woman smiles, one bows, one stays silent. Silence in the harem is scarier than shouting on the battlefield. A tea gathering is a chess match. A glance could lead to 3 prayers begging forgiveness. At night, you choose to stay with the queen, but that word travels fast to those not chosen. The next morning, whispers echo through the halls. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's your final story. You try hugging someone and feel her hand, unusually cold, but you don't pull back, because showing doubt could anger 5 entire clans. You keep smiling and drink the wine, silently praying it wasn't mixed by anyone outside the kitchen. You recall the previous pharaoh, who suddenly collapsed after a romantic dinner, and no one knew who did it, because everyone had a motive, and everyone denied it. You tried writing a letter to your trusted priest, but he had just been relocated for divine reasons. You consider escaping, but you're in the center of a pyramid with no exits. You sleep with a small dagger under your pillow and a bigger worry in your heart. The next morning, you notice a small statue turned upside down. Could be a cleaning mistake or a subtle warning. You head to court, still tasting the wine and the undigested doubt. Everyone looks suspicious. Even the breeze smells faintly of strange incense, and you realize power won't kill you. Loved ones can do it faster. So if one day your food tastes too perfect, start drafting your will. You are a pharaoh, but not the feasting in luxury kind. You're the ruler of a land full of rituals, temples, and schemes. Every day isn't lived, it's tested for survivability. You walk into the court, sit on the throne, where people expect commands, blessings, or divine signals. No one asks if you're tired. They just ask, what's the God's message today? You have to pretend you know, even if your mind is as empty as an uncovered clay jar. Someone brings a report. Villagers fought over prayer schedules. One side worships the sun god, the other worships the crocodile god. Both call each other heretics. And you, the one meant to represent both, are only allowed to smile. You declare reconciliation in the light of the gods. which means, "Please stop fighting, we're tired." Then a priest accuses another temple of misquoting a prayer. If true, it's blasphemy. If false, it's political slander. You choose neutrality by sending someone to measure the divine energy in the shrine. Meanwhile, you're informed the grain harvest dropped by 13%. Reason: people feared planting on the wrong lucky day because the divine calendar hasn't been issued. You must ask the gods for farming dates, meaning guess, then pray you're right. You don't even have time to breathe. Every breath is examined for spiritual meaning. A young prince just passed the ritual exam. They ask if you'll grant a reward. You recall his father subtly threatened you yesterday through a ceremonial poem. You reward the boy, but clarify it's due to a dream omen, not favoritism. During breaks, you can't go anywhere. Gods aren't allowed near bathing mortals. A senior official approaches. "Your Majesty, shall we erect another statue of you in the east?" Meaning, the Eastern power bloc doubts your loyalty. You nod and wonder how to maintain your image when your brain spins like a stone mill. You want to take a day off, but gods don't rest. One night, you fake illness to skip a ritual. The next day, rumors spread that Pharaoh was punished for evading worship. Every time you cough, the court holds a spirit-cleansing ritual. Every time you stay silent, they rewrite history, assigning you a cryptic divine message. No one ever truly asks what you need, because your role is to appear as if you need nothing at all. And anyone who dares ask you a real question gets reassigned to statue-building duty in a distant desert. In meetings, you nod when you disagree and shake your head just to see how others react. No one trusts anyone. Every word is part of a performance, and you're the lead actor in a lifelong play with no rehearsal breaks. One day, you try to speak honestly. An old priest immediately faints. They say your words are divine truth. So honesty becomes a shock to the system. You smile. Everyone else smiles. But no one knows what they're smiling about. At sunset, you retreat to your chamber, the only place, maybe, without eavesdroppers. You sit and stare into the stone courtyard. In silence, you're a pharaoh, but you don't live. You exist, worshipped but not trusted. And you realize, surviving the throne isn't about power, it's about learning how not to become a target. Night falls, not a time for rest, but the start of your soul's next shift. You're a king, but before sleeping, you must ask permission from 9 gods through the divine slumber ritual. That means reciting another prayer, longer than the national anthem. Before that, you must rewrite last night's dream, so the priests can interpret it. They grade your dreams like philosophy teachers marking metaphysical essays. If you dream of water, they say you're anxious. If you dream of fire, maybe you're discontent with a ritual. If you don't dream at all, worse, a pharaoh who doesn't dream signals cosmic imbalance. After dream grading, you must choose the right incense blend based on the Egyptian zodiac. You don't pick what you like. You pick based on wind direction and moon phase. The room must align north-south, so the sun god can shine through the spirit gate. Your stone bed lies between 2 murals of dream-guarding deities, and a small statue stares at you all night. You want to flip it face down, but you don't dare. A past king did that and got bitten by a snake the next morning. That story is carved on temple walls. You lie down, but before closing your eyes, you're reminded to repeat the 9 vows of the awakened soul. You whisper them, lips sore. A servant stands 3 meters away, listening and taking notes. If you recite them out of order, tomorrow you must perform the apology to the universe ritual. You feel tired, but tiredness is taboo for the representative of eternity. You breathe deeply and hear your heartbeat being matched to ritual drum rhythms. On the small table is a cup of holy water. You sip half. The other half is for the gods to grant dreams. Tastes like burnt sacred leaves. You grimace. No one cares. You close your eyes. Moments later, soft footsteps approach. It's a priest, placing a scroll with a dream from a pharaoh 300 years ago to inspire your sleep. You don't ask why a dead man's dream matters tonight. You stay silent, like every night. Outside, ritual lamps stay lit. Someone chants your name before a god statue every 3 hours. In sleep, you don't sleep like ordinary men. You must dream according to plan. And if you dream wrong, tomorrow morning you'll have to explain why. A priest once said, "The pharaoh alone bears responsibility for the entire world, even while asleep." You smile, a smile no one sees. Then you dream of being somewhere else. No throne, no prayers, no stone statues staring at you. But you wake up to the sound of the third night watch bell. A servant brings you a scented cloth, quietly asks, "What did you dream of, my lord?" You answer, "I don't remember." The servant nods and writes down, "Empty dream, possible spiritual imbalance." You lie still for a few minutes, then sit up, because the sun is about to rise, and you realize you didn't sleep. You just completed an 8-hour ritual. Time to rise. The gods are waiting, and you still don't get any days off. You once thought being pharaoh meant a long life, ruling for decades, earning a place in history. The truth is, many pharaohs didn't live past 20. Some died in war, some died of illness, others died by fate. Fate is what they say when they don't want to say died suspiciously. Some were doing rituals in the morning and stopped breathing at dinner. People said it was the gods' will. But you know, sometimes the gods work in the kitchen. Pharaoh Tutankhamun died at 19. Broken leg, high fever, weak genetics, and possibly murdered. His mummification was rushed. The heat too high. His flesh burned inside the coffin. Still, he was called the son of the sun god. Many after him died the same way. No warning, no investigation, just a short prayer, then a new name. Being pharaoh means you're always the center, but also the target. You live in temples, and you die in temples. No one's sure if they protect you or imprison you. One day you wake with a headache, and the servants are gone. Another day you eat something odd, and never eat again. No doctors, just someone examining your organs after death, saying, "He was punished by the gods." You survive a plot, but people say, "He must be blessed." You catch someone putting something in your wine. No proof, no report, just another purification ritual. You feel your body weakening, but you can't admit it because pharaohs don't get sick. You're not allowed to hurt, or be tired, or groan. And so, when you die, no one is surprised. They simply write, "He returned to the gods, having fulfilled his destiny," even if the mission had just begun. And you never truly lived as a human being. That night, you're mummified, a ritual lasting 3 months. You feel nothing, but the scent of resin seeps into your hair, your skin, your bones. Your heart is removed, to be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If your heart is light, you pass to the afterlife. If heavy, you get eaten by a divine crocodile. But that's for later. For now, you lie in a stone coffin, mummified, sealed, and prayed not to be robbed. And the next one crowned is your brother, the same one who poured your wine. No one questions it, because dying at 19, 25, or 34 is nothing new in this palace. In ancient Egypt, people didn't ask why the king died. They only asked, "Has the ritual been completed?" The body would be thoroughly mummified, buried with gold, wine, spells, and 700 little figurines to serve you in the afterlife. Everything was sacred, ceremonial, discreet. But unfortunately, thousands of years later, an archaeology team decides to open your tomb for scientific purposes. They're not grave robbers. They wear white lab coats, carry magnifying glasses, and have permits. And so you, once a divine symbol, are lifted from your stone coffin with nylon straps and rubber gloves. They place you on a steel table. X-ray, CT scan, biopsy. One person taps your skull and says, "Interesting structure." Another points at your toe. "Looks broken." Maybe during transport, you're pulled from your eternal rest to serve the thesis of someone whose name you never knew. They document every crack in your bones, but never know you like dates more than bread. Then you're moved to a museum, placed in a glass case, under bright white lights. A small sign reads, Unidentified pharaoh mummy.
Circa 1320 BCE.
You were once worshipped with gold and incense. Now you're next to the Egyptian cat mummies exhibit. People walk past you, eating snacks, talking on phones, taking selfies with smiley face filters. A young couple points at you and says, "Looks like that cartoon character," and no one remembers that you once ruled an empire. Then Hollywood hears a rumor about a mummy's curse, and suddenly you're a horror movie script. In the film, you crawl out of your coffin, screaming, killing people with your bandaged hand. In real life, you just want to sleep, and for no one to tap your coffin again. But no one cares. Your power is gone. All that remains is media value. They sell mini versions of you at the gift shop. Cute, keychain friendly. Kids laugh next to statues you once vowed to protect. Someone asks the tour guide, "Is that Tutankhamun?" The answer, "Not sure. Maybe." Anyway, next is the dog mummy exhibit. One woman stares at you longer, then mutters, "Poor thing." That's the only emotion you receive all day. And when the museum lights go out, you still lie there, silent, staring at the ceiling. No tomb, no gods, no one saying your name. Maybe you once thought you'd be remembered forever. But in the end, all that remains is a skull, a few documentary clips, and some fictional dialogue. You once lived to protect the divine. Now you're part of a middle school field trip. A researcher once said, "The real pain isn't death. It's being treated like you never lived. You were once the center of the world. Now no one even remembers how to spell your name. People debate how you died. But no one knows you liked waking before dawn just to watch the Nile. A life spent ruling. A life pretending to be a god. Then death. Then display. Then forgetfulness. Some say that's the price of greatness. But you know, it's the price of being turned into the wrong kind of legend. A rewritten myth. A blockbuster movie. A coffin that's no longer sacred. You were buried to never be disturbed. In the end, everyone comes to touch you, but no one touches the person you once were. You sleep 1,000 years unrest, only to be raised for a traveling exhibition. A body once mummified in sacred ritual now lies in a theft-proof glass case at a museum, with a serial number, an inspection seal, and LED lights shining up from under your chin. The back that once leaned against a throne now rests on a gray aluminum stand in the archaeology lab. They call it heritage of mankind. You call it being scrutinized vertebra by vertebra. Scanners sweep across your forehead, counting skull fractures. A few magazines call it an anthropological breakthrough. Findings: fractured right foot, worn enamel, shorter height than expected. One researcher notes, "Might have had a slight hunch. They don't know you hunched from wearing a 3 kilograms crown every day for 10 years. All they know is you make a good 3D print model." A few months later, you're shipped to Paris, placed in a new glass case, next to a cat mummy and a jar of liver no one dares to open. Children press their faces to the glass and giggle. "Looks like a zombie from an American movie." A tourist takes a photo, adds a pharaoh hat filter, captions it, "Chillin' with my 3,000-year-old buddy smiling face with sunglasses." In their minds, you're no longer a person, just something old and odd. Your name is shortened to 4 easy-to-print letters for mugs and keychains. Ancient prayers are turned into tourism slogans. Live like a pharaoh, sleep like a mummy. Some say you're lucky because you're famous, but the fame only came after you lost all right to say no. You didn't sign off on being displayed, nor did you agree to have your skull scanned. Every night, the lights go off, and the mummy silently stares up through the glass ceiling. Once a living symbol, now a time-limited decoration on loan. The curse isn't in ancient spells. It's in licensing contracts no one ever asked you about. They call you a treasure, but treat you like leftover stage props. Discussed on TV, clipped on TikTok, renamed the most mysterious king in history. You used to be yourself. Now you're a meme. In life, you weren't allowed to complain. In death, you're not allowed peace. They recreate your statue in plastic resin. Then right underneath, recreated with respect, But no respect is enough if no one ever stopped to ask, "Did you want this?" And for 3,000 years, no one has ever asked that question. You once ruled an empire. Every word you said was carved into stone. You thought that would make your name eternal. But time doesn't read hieroglyphs. People remember you as a mummy, a cartoon dummy, not as the man who built dikes, erected temples, or ended a 19-year war. A historian once guessed, maybe he reformed the tax system, or just sat there, wore a hat, and listened to music, because the records are lost. The writing faded. All that remains is your body. And some Reddit threads. Some confuse you with Tutankhamun. Others think you're a character from Assassin's Creed. Some people think you're Anubis because they saw your face on a meme. No one remembers you once outlawed child sacrifice. No one recalls you began 3 irrigation canals to stop the lower delta from starving. They only remember the big statue and the snake-shaped crown. Unless your name is Ramses II. Otherwise, you're just some king in a glass case. Some tour guides rush past your exhibit to save time for the cat mummy section. In textbooks, you're labeled Pharaoh of Unknown Contributions. On Google, you get 3 lines, mostly speculation. You once pardoned 200 slaves. But now, no one pardons you from being forgotten. Some filmmakers used your image, then added laser swords and magical amulets. They raised you from the grave, gave you perfect British English, and had you chase the hero through a museum. With every new movie release, you're pulled further from real history for entertainment. Sometimes you think, if I had known this, I would have lived differently, maybe kept a journal, or carved your name a little bigger on the temple gate. But you once believed living righteously was enough for memory to remain. Now you see, all that's left is the shape. Everything else, made up by others. A group of archaeology students comments, "This guy probably wasn't that important." They're not wrong. Not because you were nameless, but because they don't need to remember. In a world where no one recalls who did what, as long as you look like something, that's enough. They make movies, redraw your face, add features to make it trend. You become a mashup of nostalgia, Hollywood, and a t-shirt designer's imagination. Your real achievements, still buried somewhere in the sand. Maybe one day, someone will uncover a small tablet. Maybe your name will still be there, among sun symbols and lotus flowers. But by then, the reader probably won't care anymore. Because between AI and 15-second videos, no one has time for someone who once did something. You keep thinking about fairness, about how history treats those who once carried a nation. And you realize, no one truly keeps anything forever. You died once in the tomb, and 100 more times in the fading memory of mankind. The death of the body hurts less than the death of identity. A famous mummy, but no one's sure why you're famous. A name carved into stone, but its meaning eroded by the wind long ago. You try to remember what you once did, and even you start to feel unsure. Maybe you once fought, once loved, once failed, once changed. But now, it all lies inside one simple question. Who were you? And in a silence lasting 3 millennia, no answer ever arrives in time. An empire, a lifetime, a name once echoed across kingdoms. Now just a dried body in an air-conditioned room. They say you're a legend, but no one remembers what your story actually was. You did many things, but history never promised to write it all down. And the bitter truth is, sometimes doing good doesn't guarantee being remembered. You spent 20 years building the pyramid. Each stone a punctuation mark of ambition. Laborers died, hands blistered, stones collapsed, droughts came, orders from gods, a system programmed by sweat and bone. Each corridor aligned to Sirius, so your soul wouldn't lose its way in death. It was all sacred, precise, meaningful. 3,000 years later, a group of travel bloggers stands on the nearby hill. One lifts a phone, tilt the angle to make it look more mysterious. Another spins around, add a sunset filter. It'll look deeper. Behind them, the pyramid rises, not as a tomb, but as a backdrop. One jumps, one laughs, one live streams. We're at that cursed pharaoh spot, guys. Caption reads, #Ancient Vibes, #Spiritual, #Just Vibing. A girl climbs near the pyramid base, gently touches the stone your ancestor once laid, then says, "Whoa, it's buzzing. That's trippy." No ritual, no prayer, just fire emoji and vintage filters. The guard smokes, listens to pop music, and reminds tourists not to climb past the third step. You once thought this place would be untouchable, at least sacred, but now there are electric carts and coconut water stands. Near the entrance, there's a photo booth with a backdrop of you, 1.5 meters taller than life. Kids climb on your shoulders while parents snap "My kid as Pharaoh" photos. A Western tourist fakes an ancient Egyptian accent, "I am your king," then bursts out laughing. At the pyramid's foot, trash, bread wrappers, straws, flyers from the Curse Uncovered tour. A TikTok dance crew blasts EDM, and then, on sacred stone, they all start shaking their hips. Nearby, an old lady sells glow-in-the-dark pyramid keychains, made in Thailand. You were mummified with rare resins. Now they slap glow stickers on your face. Your protective deity statue once stood tall at the temple gate, now dismantled for repairs, equipped with green LEDs. A trap music video is being shot. The altar of your ancestors is now the main set. The director says, "This place is sick, dark spiritual vibes. No one knows who lies here. No one needs to. As long as the shot looks good." The angle is mysterious, and TikTok's algorithm likes Egypt. You built the pyramid for eternal protection. Now it protects the views. No curse activated, just a stabilizing gimbal. You thought immortality meant being remembered, but today it means getting remixed with background music. Someone asks, "Who built this pyramid anyway?" A young guide answers, probably some Ramses dude. Doesn't matter, really. You lie there, beneath millions of stones, hearing the future say, "Not important. You died building something you thought was eternal." Now it's tagged #cursed vibes. Someone spray paints a red heart and lover's name on the stones. You were once the spiritual axis of the universe. Now you're a trendy wedding photo backdrop. When was the last time someone bowed before you in silence? Maybe 2,600 years ago, or maybe never, and you realize, no monument is big enough to stop forgetfulness wearing tight jeans and dancing on sacred floors. Now you know, being Pharaoh isn't like in the movies. No epic soundtrack, no slow motion, just sweat, paranoia, and 4,000 years of scrutiny by people who weren't there. You thought being king meant ultimate power? Please get in line behind the sun god, Nile god, fertility god, death god, and an army of fortune tellers. Every meal is a ritual. Every nap is a plea. Every smile is a potential poisoning. Congrats. You live in a palace gilded with gold, but never dare open a window, because those inside might kill you, and those outside want your seat. And the gods? Always testing whether you're holy enough. Every morning is a performance. Every night is a moral exam by your ancestors. Then you die, young, or just exhausted. Then you're mummified. Then you're excavated. Then you're live-streamed. Every mystery about you decoded by a YouTuber in a neon shirt, standing in the desert. But you don't get to reply. No privacy. Nothing left to say. In the 21st century, you can turn off comments. Go offline. Travel without divine permission. In 1325 AD, at least you could ask a monk. In 1250 BCE, you needed a ritual, goat blood, and a sign from the heavens. If you're watching this video on your phone, congratulations. You are not a pharaoh. You have Wi-Fi, clean water, and no one's forcing you to marry your niece. So next time someone says, "Being king must have been awesome," tag them in this video. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and comment. I'll take Wi-Fi over a curse any day. Fire. Hello everyone. Tonight we're starting with a topic that's a little dark. A time when people lived with plagues, bizarre punishments, and dishes you definitely don't want to try. This is real life in the Middle Ages. No glitter, no illusions, Just surviving a single day was enough to become a legend. Right now, I'll take you back in time to the year 1250 and turn you into a real European peasant. So, if you're not afraid of a few chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and lie still, the night is long. Check if the lights are off. Adjust the fan breeze gently. And if you're using air conditioning, remember to pull over a thin blanket. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let yourself drift back to a year when most people didn't live past 35. That's 1,250. There's good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Well, the good news is you just woke up. The bad news is you'll wake up like this every day, until one day you won't. The bed beneath you is not a bed. It's a pile of straw, bugs, and hope that rotted away last winter. No night lamp, no essential oils, just the scent of feet, goat droppings, and something you hope isn't human. Here, darkness isn't gentle. It's thick, heavy, and always comes with coughing, teeth grinding, and howling wind like God's own sigh. Planning to stretch? Careful, the rats might see that as a declaration of war. Your spine groans like a collapsing kitchen door, but no one hears, because everyone hurts just like you. That's not sunrise outside. It's the church bell acting as your alarm, and it never apologizes. A new day begins. No coffee, no morning kiss, just cold, itches, and despair. This is where we begin. Not with glory, but with truth. You might not survive a single day. Welcome to what they call a bed. Basically just a pile of straw infested with lice. Maybe you dreamed of a mattress last night, but this morning your neck aches like something heavy sat on it. There's no pillow. That lump under your head is a rolled-up sack, and it reeks enough to wake you instantly. Every time you turn, the straw crackles like someone plucking a small animal beneath your back. The most familiar smell each morning isn't bread. It's feet. Yours or someone sleeping beside you. You wake up to snores mixed with a cow's heavy breathing, because your bedroom is shared with family and livestock. If you smell something burning, don't hope for coffee. It's probably chicken poop steaming on the damp floor. You try to rub your eyes awake, but your hands are frozen stiff and still covered in last night's dry dirt. There's a red bite on your neck, maybe a bedbug, maybe a spider, maybe something you'd rather not know. Light peeks through the cracks in the wooden wall, just enough to show you're still wearing last winter's unwashed clothes. Wind sneaks through the gaps, brushing your legs like a whisper. Still alive? But should you be? A rat scurries across your face. No permission, no knocking, and you just sigh and lie still. Someone next to you coughs violently, but you're too tired to check if they're still breathing. You sit up, back aching like you were dragged across rocks, knees screaming from the bone-deep cold. You look around, your father's already awake, yelling at someone, usually your mother or God. Your little brother's scratching lice. He's not ashamed. No one is anymore. You don't look for slippers. Not because you're lazy, you just don't have any. Your first step on the floor is a nerve test. The ground's as cold as stone, and something squishy slides underfoot. The only warmth you feel is from the cow's breath beside you, and you quietly thank it for not kicking your head last night. You yawn, and the first sensation is a metallic taste in your mouth. A clear sign of some illness yet to be named. No clocks, just the distant sound of church bells, waking even those who wish to stay asleep. Your mother lifts the pot lid. There's nothing inside, but she does it every morning like a hopeless ritual. A chicken jumps onto your bed, not to greet you. It just laid an egg in your shirt. You consider complaining, but remember, you had nothing to eat yesterday. Keep the egg. Count it as luck. The morning light highlights every crack in the hut, and the bird poop that just fell onto your hand from the roof. A new day starts with you not remembering when you fell asleep, only that sleep was a battle. Every morning here isn't a beginning. It's a continuation of yesterday's exhaustion. You try to stand, legs numb, eyes burning, neck stiff, and your back protests violently. Everyone shares the same thought. Did I really survive another day? But you get up, because there's no choice. Here, staying down is also a way to die. You pull back the tent flap, or rather, the rotting cloth, and greet the morning with a chest-rattling sneeze. It's so cold, your pee could freeze into frost. Thankfully, you don't have to go yet. Your neighbor trudges past with a blank face, like he's walking into a morgue. The baby next door is crying, but no one soothes it, because that happens every morning. Across the way, an old man is shaving with a stone, hands shaking but still persistent, even if there's barely any beard left. No coffee, no morning news, nothing new. Every day feels copy-pasted from the last. You think of last night's dream of a place with warm water, clean food, and soft beds, and chuckle to yourself. Here, even dreams are tiring, and waking up is the bravest thing you do each day. You've begun your day in a world where surviving till evening isn't guaranteed. And like every day in the Middle Ages, you don't expect much. Just hope you don't die a pointless death today. If you just woke up and need to pee, condolences. Where you're headed has no doors and definitely no toilet. You cross the soggy yard, feet sinking to the ankles, to find a hidden spot between the pen and the fence. It's cold, the ground is wet, and something rustles beside you enough to make you pause. Could be a chicken, a rat, or another kid dealing with the same business. You pull your pants down, trying to balance, but the wind whips your back like nature's own punishment. No toilet paper, just leaves. Pray they're not the spiky kind. You finish and there's no tap, no water. Maybe wait for rain, or wipe your hands on your pants like everyone else. Hygiene is something you've heard in the Bible, but never seen in real life. And you never thought needing to poop could be the reason you caught a disease. But here it can. Next to where you went is the village's trash pile from last week, reeking like history decomposing. No one cleans it because no one thinks it's worth keeping clean. You walk back, trying not to look at your feet. Whatever you stepped in might make you lose your appetite. If you're a woman, going to the bathroom means sneaking, worrying, and sometimes being more scared than walking the forest at night. They call it natural. But this kind of nature just makes you miss a tiled toilet like a distant luxury dream. Bathing? Oh, here it's a public event, which means everyone sees, everyone feels awkward, so most just skip it. You don't get to choose when to bathe. If there's water, you bathe. If not, wait till next month. Sometimes you think, if being dirty is normal, then being clean must be the real oddity. No one mocks you for smelling bad, because everyone smells bad. Here, body odor is part of your identity. You walk past an old lady and have to try not to breathe through your nose. She hasn't for a long time either. The last place you bathed was the riverbank. No soap, but plenty of fish, and the occasional floating rat corpse. You remember that day. The water was crystal clear, until the kid next to you diluted it with a small, sad event. You hand-washed your shirt, scrubbing like you were trying to erase a month of filth. The result? A fresh mildew smell. Clothes dried in the wind don't smell clean, just less wet. And you wear them like it's a blessing. Someone in the village claimed to have used fireplace ash to clean themselves. Judging by the result, you won't try it. Occasionally, the church hands out holy water, and someone actually used it to wash their hands after pooping. Seriously, you heard about a nobleman who built a private pooping room with bricks. The villagers thought he was insane. While you're wondering about bacteria, a kid nearby just licked his fingers after playing in mud. They say dirt makes you live longer, but here it just means dying a bit slower, and no one cares anymore. Every toilet trip is a battle between dignity and accepting reality. Reality wins most of the time. No privacy, no comfort, just you, wet grass, and the fear someone might walk by at the worst possible moment. If you're wondering, what about at night? Congratulations, you'll experience stumbling through mud in the dark. Many have slipped during nighttime toilet runs. Some never came back, not from kidnapping, but from pure shame. There's a village corner called the place everyone goes but no one admits. It's the nameless toilet graveyard. One time you heard clapping in the bushes. Turned out two people were sharing a toilet spot. Kids don't care. They go right at the front door. Adults do care but still do it during rain. You once asked, why doesn't anyone build a private toilet? Someone replied, we haven't reached that level of luxury. Centuries later, people will build things called restrooms, and won't understand how their ancestors lived like this. But here, in the year 1250, a toilet is a fluid concept in both the literal and figurative sense. You can try to adapt, but every morning, every urge, every rain, they all remind you you're never really ready. This is a place where you don't need paper, because you've lost the pride to stay clean. You just need to survive. You just sat up when the smell of breakfast hit your nose, and there's nothing in it that makes you want to swallow. In the pot is something resembling porridge, if porridge was reheated 10 times and forgotten on the fire each time. This gray, thick, slightly burnt, with a few strange bits, and you really don't want to know what they are. The bread is hard as stone. You could use it as a weapon if you hit someone. You try to break off a piece and it snaps in two, and the crumb bounces off the ground. No milk, no butter, nothing to make it better. Maybe this is the original bread. The child next to you chews a piece without complaint, only because they don't know what real bread tastes like. There's a water bucket, but villagers say, don't drink. Last time someone did, they didn't need to eat again. Ever. Instead of water, people pass around a jug of thin, flat beer, like rainwater caught from a leaky roof. You take a sip, it's bitter in the mouth, warm in the belly, and your head feels just as empty as the scraped-out porridge pot. Breakfast here isn't to fill you. It's to remind you hunger is still around, and today won't be any different from yesterday. Every clink of chipped bowl and wooden spoon is like a sad note in the symphony of malnutrition. You look around. Everyone eats. No one smiles. No one expects anything. Everything is just repetition. An old man eats and coughs at once. A piece of porridge falls from his mouth. You try not to stare. Your mother blows on the pot, not to cool it down, but to blow away the moldy smell. Some chew without swallowing. They know the rest of the day might not offer anything more. Stomach growls are considered normal sounds, as familiar as a rooster's morning crow. An old lady nods and says, less burnt than yesterday. You're not sure if that's a compliment or surrender. The food smell clings to your hands, your hair, your clothes, and stays with you like an unwilling perfume. You try to finish your share, not because you're full, but to avoid being seen as someone living fancy in a place with no fancy. Fullness here doesn't come from food. It comes when your stomach is too tired to ask for more. Sometimes you wonder how people even survive these meals. Then you take another bite. Kids don't complain. They think this is normal. They've never known milk or real pastries. You see a child licking a spoon spotless, not because it's tasty, but because it's the cleanest thing they've touched today. A girl next to you wraps up a piece of hard bread, saving it for her father, who hasn't come home since yesterday morning. You whisper, anything for lunch? And the person across just smiles like it's the funniest joke all day. After every meal, you don't feel better, just alert enough to start another day. Someone once said, we eat to live, but here it feels like you eat just to prolong the exhaustion. The empty porridge pot is flipped upside down, tilting like the helmet of a soldier whose sword has snapped. You don't wash the bowl. There's no water, you just wipe it on your pants like everyone else always has. One rainy day, water dripped into the porridge pot, and everyone was glad. Thinner today, easier to swallow. And if you feel nauseous, don't worry. It means you still have senses. One time you spat out a mouthful of porridge, and your mother just said, don't waste it. Push it down. We'll cook it again tomorrow. No one throws food away. That's a worse crime than stealing. Theft might get you beaten. Waste gets you hated. You glance into the pot's bottom. The leftover is a blackened crust. Still someone's saving it. A child sucking their fingers. Eyes locked on your bowl like you're holding the entire world. You hand it over not out of pity, but because you can't take another bite. The child smiles, and you know for sure they'll grow up with a stomach trained to be empty. Breakfast ends like every day, with a growling stomach and the hope that lunch might be even slightly different. And you stand up, thanking your empty belly. At least it doesn't ask for too much in the Middle Ages. Think wearing old clothes is a vintage experience? Try living here, where torn clothes aren't a style, they're standard. One outfit, literally. From your birthday to your 10th death anniversary. The fabric is so thin you can see light through it, even when it's not daytime. Every time you sit, you hear a crack. Not sure if it's the fabric tearing or your knees freezing apart. Your pants don't have a front or back. All sides are equally muddy and smell like the cattle pen. Your shirt is stiff like paper soaked and dried on a smoky stove. The buttons are long gone. People use string. And when that breaks, well, let the wind in for ventilation. Shoes? If you're lucky, you have a pair with soles thinner than your faith in the gods. If not, you go barefoot, every step a negotiation with thorns, stones, and livestock dung. By now you realize human feet were not designed for the medieval world. Your head itches, not from dandruff, from lice, the only living thing here thriving more than you. You scratch until you bleed. They still crawl, still lay eggs, still live better than you do. Everyone has lice. Everyone knows. And no one cares anymore. They've got bigger problems. Some shave their heads. Some use fireplace ash. Some pray to gods. But lice don't listen to anyone. You rub your collar and see a dark streak. Not mold, but dried skin from yesterday's scratching. Body odor? Fascinating. Everyone smells different, yet all have one thing in common. None smell good. The thickest coat you have is actually the layer of dried sweat stuck to your shirt all winter. When it rains, clothes double in weight and triple in cold. Goosebumps. Anyone? One time you fell asleep in the rain. Woke up with your shirt glued to your back like a wooden plank. Peeling it off? You lost a layer of skin. But hey, at least the lice left temporarily. No one changes clothes. They patch, sew, and stack layers like a failed mummy rebirth. You look at your hands, cracked like a geological map, and your nails black as farmland soil. Sour armpits, smoky kitchens, moldy blankets, blended into a cologne no one dares name. Every time someone pats your shoulder, you flinch, not from pain, but fear their shirt dust will stick to yours. When you scratch your back and hear a pop, don't worry, that's not a bone breaking, just a scab snapping off. Some say if you survive winter without changing clothes, you qualify as a living monument. Sometimes there's a laundry festival, but only when it rains, rivers rise, and no one is dangerously sick. You feel oddly happy when you discover a new hole in your shirt. At least it's more breathable. But then you ask, why am I still itching? Because besides lice, there are fleas, mites, and things you don't want to name. You sit there, in what used to be a shirt, scratching your head by reflex, realizing the only things enjoying life here are the parasites. Now let's talk about dental care. Think toothaches are just minor problems? Here it's a slow, painful death sentence. No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no dentist within 1,000 light years. You've got a toothache, and from then on, every meal is a battle between survival and infection. Starts as a tingle, then a throb, then the vein swells, turns red, and hurts so bad you bang your head against the wall for relief. No anesthesia, no antibiotics, maybe a knife, but it's for cutting vegetables, and the shaky hand of a half-baked blacksmith. Cavities aren't treated, they're pulled. No numbing, no disinfecting, just a rope and a scream no one cares to acknowledge. Dentistry here is a death match. You win if you survive the first yank. You lose if the wound gets infected and spreads through your blood, ushering you into a gradual exit. You could meet your ancestors because of one molar. Seriously. And if you survive, the socket gets infected and leaves a permanent crater as a lifelong reminder. People don't smile much. Their mouths full of black holes, broken gums, and breath like spoiled corpses. You don't speak loudly, for fear your loose tooth might drop mid-sentence. Every bite feels like the Grim Reaper leaning in. Someone tried rinsing with seawater and never spoke another word again. A lump under the jaw could turn you from healthy to corpse in 3 days. People back then didn't know what an abscess was. They just called it the evil swelling and started prepping a coffin. If you smile here, people might assume you're dying. And if you think, it'll pass after a bit of pain, then you're far too innocent. Because a toothache in the Middle Ages doesn't pass, it crawls into your heart and squeezes the last beat out of it. Welcome to the world with no dentists, where one cavity can write your obituary. And in times like this, divine intervention becomes the only hope. You'll pray for the pain to pass, but no one in the temple cares how you're begging. Around you are hunched worshippers, sobbing like the land itself is mourning. In one temple corner, an old man lights a torch with broken altar wood not for worship, but for warmth, and the fire flickers like his hope. The old seer mutters sacred phrases with great dignity, but no belief left behind the words. Yes, you could get dragged into a prophecy trance just for daring to look up at a broken statue. You hunch your shoulders, clutch your cloak, curl into a cracked stone pillar, and still wake up with frozen limbs in the morning mist. Your feet constantly trip over rubble scattered across the temple floor. Fingers grip the torch so tightly they go numb, trembling like they fear the flame might die in the night wind. No one remembers what sacred night means anymore. People just glance at you and mutter, another one begging for the gods to care. Now let's move to the moment the first silhouettes of the Dorian tribe appear on the hilltop, where the sun has just sunk behind a curtain of smoke. Sounds heroic, right? At least your house wasn't burned down? Wrong. By then, the fields looked like a sea of fire, just waiting for a spark to erupt into screams. No city stood whole, no village kept its roofs, and the concept of peace had gone extinct. You curl up in a rocky crevice, yet still can't escape the sound of hooves trampling your ancestors' graves. The Dorian soldier's breath reeks of grief and ash, blowing straight into the faces of the last fleeing souls. Wild beasts fled down the mountains, panicked by the flames and screams, from both raiders and refugees. Suppose you did escape, while screams thundered in your ears and the shadow of a raised spear loomed above. Firelight revealed the greed in the invader's eyes, and the glint of an axe sinking into someone's front door. Sounds like a war specialty, doesn't it? That's why, whether hiding in forests or beneath temple ruins, nowhere is safe from Dorian hooves in this era. One wrong step on the ash field, and you tumble into stone, wondering why you ever dreamed of tomorrow. Next time you admire a crimson sunset, remember, that's just the burning village reflecting off the sky. The elders said Dorian fire only stops when there's nothing left to burn. Sadly, they were right. You may have just stepped on a half-melted breastplate, with the stench of final battles rushing into your nose. One way or another, your heart won't thank you. Tonight, it'll throb in startled, uneven beats. A hoofbeat, a torch flare, or the chill when you realize the enemy just spotted you. You need an escape, but the wasteland offers only scorched weeds and blood-soaked mud. Tragic, isn't it? Living in a time when Mother Earth is reduced to a graveyard for shattered dreams of conquest. We started by staring at the barren grasslands, then chose to run instead of fighting a hopeless fight. Whether holding an axe or a broken spear, all you see is the enemy's shadow rising in the firelight. People fought not out of hatred but out of fear, afraid that not killing would mean being killed. In those days, every scream was a rushed goodbye, every night a gamble to see who would still be breathing by dawn. See someone fall by the roadside? Tomorrow night, that might be you. Clearly, the Dorian spears tonight won't leave anyone behind. The solution: run, hide, or pray the fire spreads fast enough that the enemy doesn't find you. Gulping down murky water mid-chaos is better than dying of thirst when the flames surround you. Some even believed bitter tree roots were better than falling into enemy hands. And yes, it was the enemy who burned the village, stole the grain, razed the temples, and pitched tents atop the graves. Imagine crawling into a rocky nook, listening to your house burn, too scared to even breathe. A full package night of smoke, blood, and tears. Feeling hopeless, trembling? Maybe because you just saw an enemy's shadow, spear gleaming in the firelight. Survival tactic? Silence, shivers, breath held, and hope the gods, if they still exist, look the other way. And if that doesn't work, brace yourself for being dragged from the brush like a beast from its cave. Now, if you hear a child crying in the distance, pray it's not your own. Now let's talk medieval jobs. Not a farmer? You'll still be swimming in animal guts, rawhide, and stench every morning. Forge? dye vat, tannery, each one just a step away from grilling yourself alive. Every deep breath adds a fresh coat of greasy smoke to your lungs. If you're a tanner, sorry, your smell alone could suffocate rats at the door. They say every trade is noble, but how noble can it be when the whole village avoids you due to weeks-old corpse stench? Think butchers have it easy? Wait till a pig's innards explode in your face. Some jobs end with a wash in ash, lemon, and despair. Meet a potter? He's halfway through burning his hand after opening the kiln in a wind gust. Meet a blacksmith? Hair scorched, skin peeling, fingers blistered, and it's only Monday morning. Any clean trades? Maybe, but probably only in someone's dreams. They said, labor is glorious. Here, glorious means you still have all your fingers. Kids learning trades get taught their first skill. Smell danger before something explodes. You could weave nets unless a fish takes a bite and leaves you with half a hand. Gate guard? 3 kicks a day, 5 insults a night. Night torchbearer? Good luck with the wind blasts, fire sputters, and burning hair. Who said glass blowing is artistic? Stand near a 1,000-degree furnace and see how long art lasts. The ox cart pullers smirk. At least they don't crawl inside pig carcasses. Textile stampers? Each press mashes a finger, and the dye stains for a week. Charcoal burner? Welcome to clothes that will never be clean again. Any clean jobs? Sure, if clean means coated only in the scent of death. Crematorium workers don't speak much, mostly because their lungs gave up long ago. Think craftsmanship is poetic? Here, every creation costs blood, burns, and chronic coughing. Even bakers aren't safe, mixing flour with pond water and hands that haven't been washed in weeks. One slip while carving meat, one overheated brick kiln, and you become a workplace accident. Trumpeter in a ceremony? Windburn, dust storms, numb lips, swollen jaw, all for a strangled horn note. No one asks, what do you do? Out of admiration, they're checking if you carry disease. On a good day, you might be burning coal, slaughtering sheep, and patching dung-covered clothes. The job chooses you not for skill, but because you're reckless enough to survive the week. Every cough brings out a mix of soot, smoke, and animal grease from memory. That's why these were called luck jobs. Bad luck, you die. Good luck, you die. A little later, when winter comes, you don't feel cold. You feel your skin stiffen in layers like bark. Wind creeps into the house from every direction, even with 3 layers of stone blocking the door. The first night, you can't sleep from the cold. By the third, your teeth are clattering nonstop. No fireplace, just white breath and kids groaning from frozen toes. Winter here doesn't come with pretty snow, only frozen mud and purple, swollen feet. Every morning starts by checking if you can still move or if you froze solid halfway through the night. Leaving the house isn't a concept. One more step and your knees go numb. When the water in the jar ices over, you start drinking the warmest thing left. Last season's flat beer. Kids huddle in the kitchen corner. Adults fake being full to save a spoon of porridge for the evening. You used to think cold was the problem? No, the problem is it lasts so long you forget what warmth feels like. Some homes use smoke to push the cold out, but it stings your eyes, chokes your throat, and haunts your sleep. Every gust of wind makes the walls shake like they're about to collapse. Cold doesn't kill you quickly. It wears you down until you can't even sit up. At night, the groaning isn't from stray dogs. It's from neighbors wasting away from hunger and cold. You bundle everything on top of yourself and still shiver like a leaf, because your shirt is damp, straw is moldy, and blanket is torn. If you think winter's torture, stay long enough for summer. As the sun rises higher, your home becomes a suffocating oven. No fans, no breeze, only flies buzzing around fermented urine. You can't breathe. The air is thick like wax, heavy with odors that make your head spin. Who sleeps in summer? Only those used to their heart pounding from dehydration. Every bead of sweat is a warning that someone might collapse in the yard today. Kids no longer run. They just lie down, staring at the ceiling cracked by heat. Adults reek right after lunch, and no one's surprised if someone faints on the porch. You open the door for air, but only the scent of dead rats and human waste wafts in. Flies land on your hands, in your eyes, and straight into the water pot you haven't even boiled. Every wave of the hand swats away dust and drags a few more bugs toward you. Summer isn't just hot. It's a never-ending suffocation that feels like living inside a tomb. When night falls, the heat doesn't drop. It just changes flavor. From burning to putrid. No one wants to sleep. No one dares stay awake. Every inch of floor oozes weird smells from the soil. And then you realize, every season can send you to meet your ancestors, just in different flavors of suffering. Home isn't a place of safety. It's where you count the hours, waiting for a death that won't be peaceful. No one sings in summer, no one laughs in winter. Only groans in the kitchen and broken snores on the floor. Touch the wall. In winter it stings like steel, in summer it sweats like grease. Try sneaking outside. Flies follow, dogs bark, and neighbors look at you like you've lost it. You can't breathe, can't sleep, can't eat, but you still get up before sunrise. Summer dust hangs like fog, sticks to your throat, and makes you cough through every meal. If someone dies at home, no one knows if it was the sickness or the weather. Cold makes your bones ache. Heat thickens your blood. Both dull your brain. You count rainy days like miracles. But when it rains, the roof leaks, clothes mold, and your feet rot. And then you realize, surviving all 4 seasons isn't normal. It's a personal achievement. When you think you're alone, remember hundreds of tiny creatures live with you, right on your skin. They don't knock, don't ask, and never leave. Every time you scratch your head, you're interrupting their banquet. You bathe, they don't care. The water isn't strong enough to wash off a 3-generation colony. You change your shirt, but they're still there. You didn't change your skin after all. Your bed is your fortress and their castle. You don't see them, but your skin does. Every bite leaves a mark. You knew the word lice before your ABCs. No microscope needed, you feel them through midnight itching. That cool feeling on your back at night? It's the damp floor and a bug crawling past. Every scratch doesn't just repel the enemy. It confirms you're still alive. Planning to catch each one? Schedule 3 weeks with no sleep. Everyone shares their body, some know it, others pretend they don't. No one admits they have lice, but one look at their old headscarf tells enough. Love is temporary, but bugs are forever. You grit your teeth not out of bravery, but because you're too tired to scream. One itchy bite becomes a 3rd ulcer after just one restless sleep. A best friend may betray you, but bugs won't. They stick with you to the end. You may be too poor for shoes, but never too poor for parasites. Sit to rest, and a bug crawls up your arm like it's greeting you. Smell something strange? That's a cocktail of sweat, blood, and poop from nameless tenants. In the heat, they crawl faster. In the cold, they cling harder. You can shave your head, but don't be surprised when they return stronger in a few days. Bugs don't care if you're good or bad. If you've got blood, you're enough. You're never alone, especially when you wake at midnight scratching both armpits. Living with them isn't a choice. It's a survival rule. No one can get rid of them all, you just negotiate for fewer bites. No need for pets. The bugs have already filled the companionship role. If someone says they don't get bitten, there are only 2 options. They're lying or they've gone numb. And no matter how much you hate them, you have to admit, bugs know how to keep you from feeling alone. Mornings don't start anything, they just drag on what hasn't ended. You open your eyes not because you want to live, but because you haven't stopped yet. No one asks if you're okay. Everyone's too busy trying not to collapse. You work because stopping means nothing will be in your bowl tonight. You don't think ahead. Tomorrow is more blurred than a dream cut short. Hunger isn't as painful as pretending it doesn't exist. Someone beside you falls, you don't help, you step back to avoid being dragged down. Every step makes your legs protest, but you walk anyway, there's no other choice. Groans go unheard, they've become background noise. You don't need bravery, you just need to keep moving. Some days you don't remember what you ate, if you ate at all. You don't believe in happy endings. Just hope it won't be too cruel. Fear no longer has a shape, just the cold grip at your neck when you think of the future. Every time you look up, your neck aches, your eyes sting, and all you see is a sky full of dust. The elderly breathe slower, not from peace, but because their lungs are too weak to gasp. Children don't laugh loudly, not because they're well-behaved, but because they've never really known joy. You stop counting days, nothing's worth marking anymore. Someone still tells jokes, not to laugh but to prove they can still speak. You work not to gain, but because stopping means losing everything. No one cries when someone dies. They just look at each other and wait their turn. You sit in silence at night, not to meditate, but because your legs can't stand anymore. The exhaustion doesn't come from labor, but from living hour to hour with no purpose. You don't say "stay strong" to anyone. Those words have lost all meaning here. When someone collapses, you just watch and wonder, why not me yet? No one has time to dream. Beautiful dreams cost more than warm blankets. You never sleep enough, not from being busy, but because even exhaustion can't bring rest. They call you resilient, but that's just another way of saying used to pain. You don't share what you've seen, because no one needs another tragedy. Your hands are calloused, not from work, but from going too long without being held. You try to stand tall, even though your back is curved from too many times bowing down. No one reminds you to live well. Everyone's too busy trying to survive. You don't cry at the sight of blood. Your tears dried up after too many losses. Every time you smile, it's forced. But you still do it, because no one can handle another hopeless face. You look at your hand and wonder if it's shaking from cold or fear. Dreams of a good day no longer come. You just hope today isn't worse than yesterday. No one talks about hope anymore. It was buried with those who once dared to dream. You don't hate anyone. Don't blame anything. Feelings are just another burden you can't afford. When night falls, you don't wish for light. You just hope no one sees you collapse. You keep living, not for any reason, just because dying still costs more than enduring. And if someone asks why you're still alive, the most honest answer is, because no one's dug my grave yet. You leave the field at dusk, not because the work's done, but because you can no longer see your hoe. Every step home feels like dragging the entire day behind your legs. Your back aches so much. Bending to pick up straw makes your heart race. You wonder what you ate today, then laugh because you can't remember. The ache in your jaw makes every bite feel like another round of torture. You sit on the hay, not caring about the moldy smell or bugs hiding beneath. No one tucks you in, and the cold bites as if testing your skin's limit. The coughing next door is the only lullaby you get tonight. You roll over, trying to find a pain-free position, but everywhere stings, aches, or throbs. A child cries in the night from hunger, and you can't blame them, you feel the same. Someone says aloud, "It'll be sunny tomorrow," but no one replies, because no one needs false hope. You think of tomorrow, and every part of your body protests the idea. Someone still keeps the fire burning, not for warmth, but to scare away the rats. You lie there like someone who just crawled back from a battlefield with no victors. Wind creeps through the wall cracks, reminding you the cold is saving its worst for before dawn. You close your eyes not to sleep, but because they're dry, sore, and tired. Someone quietly recites names of the dead. You just hope yours isn't on the list. No one promises anything now, only silence as thick as mud covering every thatched roof. You breathe softly, not to relax, but so you don't wake the hunger curling in your gut. The sound of mice in the straw annoys you, but you let it go, because it's less threatening than reality. You don't hope for sweet dreams, because even in dreams you're still plowing fields. Your hand forms a fist, not to fight, but to stop it from trembling. Nightfall brings no peace, only the illusion that everything has ended. You once thought there'd be a day of rest, but no such day was ever called rest. Every night is another survival, and every morning is the sentence continuing. You don't complain anymore, not because it stopped hurting, but because silence is a habit now. Someone whispers a prayer, but it never seems to reach the gods. You lie there, no shelter, no hope, no dreams, just raw existence. Someone snores loudly, and you're grateful they can still sleep. Another day ends, and if you're still breathing, you've won the cruel game of survival. No one pats your back, no lullabies, no one knows what you've just endured. You don't fall asleep willingly. It's like being dragged into exhaustion's gravity. The night has no end, only interruptions by the light announcing another day of misery. You don't know if you even slept, but when you wake, you'll crawl back to work. And if you don't wake up tomorrow, no one will scream. They'll just take your hoe and carry on. At day's end, life isn't bright. It's silent, cold, and gray like moldy straw. You hug your empty stomach like it's normal, because it is. No violins, no peaceful dreams. Just a life eroding with every shallow breath. And if you still remember your name in the morning, that's a rare win worth noting. So you've lived another day, no one celebrates it, but at least you exist to see it end. Now you know, living a day in 1250 isn't a fairy tale. It's a collective lawsuit filed against fate. No white castles, no charming knights. Just gallows, open latrines, and lice crawling under your shirt. Think you'll be a poet? Fine. Just bring a hoe and a jar for rainwater. Every poem back then was a lament written between stomach growls and chickens screaming at slaughter. Think being a prince was easier? Enjoy the royal signature dish. Egalitarian dysentery. Even kings had no toilet paper. In fact, they didn't even have toilets. Think love was romantic in the Middle Ages? Wrong, love letters were written on parchment tougher than morning bread. A sweet kiss back then came with bad breath, rotten teeth, and a healthy chance of infection. Getting married? Congrats. You've just signed a lifetime contract with hunger, illness, and rats in the bridal room. And if you're a woman, don't bother dreaming. At best, you'll get to choose between hauling water or non-stop childbirth. A child? You think you get to play? Nope. You're gifted a hoe and the blessing. Grow up fast so you can plow. Mornings smell of blood. Noons scream. Evenings serve watery porridge. And nights hiss with wind through straw. You haven't seen hell, but it looks a lot like a moldy shack in 1250, with bugs and coughing. And if you're a scientist, congrats, you'll be burned for saying the earth is round. An artist, painting, you'll be called a witch if you don't draw Jesus with enough reverence. Want to open a coffee shop? Sorry, coffee beans haven't made it to Europe yet. Want to chill in the garden? Go ahead. Flies, bugs, and horse poop will chill with you. Still dream of being an influencer? Back then, there were storytellers in taverns, like streaming but with tooth loss if you messed up the king's story. In short, life in 1250 was a non-stop survival game with no retry button. And if you still want to go back, no worries. We've got a pile of straw, a broken hoe, and a louse named Hope waiting for you. You might ask, was anything good back then? The answer, if you survived past 30, you were the village legend. There was no social media, but gossip traveled faster than today's Wi-Fi. One sneeze at the wrong time could get you branded a witch. Whoever said, the old days were simpler and beautiful clearly only saw illustrations, not reality. Because medieval paintings couldn't capture the stench, the screams, or the blisters on your palms. Sitting with AC, a phone, and food delivery, saying, I wish I lived back then? Think again. Back then, ordering food meant picking it, digging it, or wrestling it from a chicken. Sleep early, rise early, it's healthy? In 1250, you slept from exhaustion and woke up because a rat ran over your face. So next time someone says, the Middle Ages were romantic, kindly hand them all 500 points above, because surviving a day in 1250 didn't require armor. Just steel nerves, an empty stomach, and the will to let go. If you're reading this on a device with battery, light, and Wi-Fi, congratulations, you've won at life. Still longing for the medieval era? Don't worry, outdoor toilets still exist at some bus stations. Maybe you don't have pearly white teeth, but at least you have a toothbrush, a dentist, and painkillers. Maybe you're stressed, but at least no one's accusing you of witchcraft for feeling moody. And if tomorrow you complain breakfast sucks, remember the 10-day reheated watery porridge of 1250. No one's stopping you from dreaming. Just learn the difference between romance and delusion. Conclusion: the Middle Ages were a fancy invitation to a very earthly hell. One day in 1250 is a crash course in survival, where even exhaling could get you falsely executed. So if you still want to time travel, good luck. And bring toilet paper. If not, take a deep breath, raise your morning coffee, and thank the universe you weren't born in the 14th century. And now, let's see, we move on to the next chapter. What happened that made God decide to destroy the two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah with fire from heaven? This is not just an ancient story, but a lesson that still holds true for us today. Sodom and Gomorrah were once bustling, prosperous cities. The people there lived with their families, traded in the markets, and built homes just like any other community. Yet behind that lively facade was a truly dire reality. Over time, the hearts of the people grew cold. Their actions became increasingly depraved, exceeding the limits of what God could tolerate. Even so, God did not rush to punish them. He sent 2 angels to remind and warn them. But instead of repenting, the people sought to harm those messengers. And then the fateful night arrived. God decided to rain down fire and brimstone from heaven, completely consuming the 2 cities and bringing an end to a tragedy beyond saving. That terrible ending compels us to ask, what truly led them to disaster? Was it the fault of a few individuals, or did the whole community contribute to the tragedy? In today's video, we will look back at the 5 greatest sins that Sodom and Gomorrah committed, things not only of the past but still present in society today. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next stories. Well, perhaps we should start with the first sin, rampant immorality. In Sodom, sin wasn't confined to a corner. It was deeply rooted in the lives of the people, creeping into every alley and daily action. The entire city had nearly forgotten the meaning of purity and goodness. The Bible, in Genesis 19, records that God sent 2 angels to Sodom, disguised as strangers. They came to see with their own eyes, giving the city one last chance to repent. Lot, a man who kept his righteousness amidst the sin, welcomed them into his home. He showed hospitality and reverence for God in a society that had strayed from goodness. But as night fell, something terrible happened. A large crowd, both young and old, gathered outside Lot's house, surrounding it in the dark. They shouted, demanding that Lot bring the strangers out. But their intent was not to welcome. It was to commit unspeakable, immoral acts. The sin here was no longer the act of a single lost individual. It was an entire community that had lost its conscience, joining together to enable evil, regardless of the consequences. In the Bible, their words carried a far darker meaning than that of a simple encounter. The people of Sodom no longer cared for kindness, hospitality, or respect for others. They were driven by the desire to dominate, to control, and to impose power on others at any cost. This was no longer merely about lust. It was a sign that the entire society had lost respect for human dignity and the sacredness of life itself. Even worse, those guests were none other than the holy messengers sent by God. Yet the people of Sodom showed no fear or respect, not even before those sent by the Lord. They defiled values that should have been preserved: hospitality, honor, and the foundations upon which their society was once built. We must ask ourselves, is today's society heading down that same path? A world where the line between right and wrong is blurred, where respect and human dignity are easily trampled. In Sodom, the gift God gave humanity, the sacred bond of love between man and woman, was perverted. The union between man and woman was no longer a pure connection but had become a tool for violence, domination, and depravity. God's original intention was for human love to reflect compassion, commitment, and purity. But in Sodom, that sacred bond had become a crude mockery, completely opposed to the Creator's will. When we reread this story, we can see shadows of Sodom in our society today, when purity is scorned, when what was once condemned is now celebrated and encouraged. We live in an age where moral boundaries are more fragile than ever. Sacred values preserved for generations are easily disregarded and mocked. Many may think the story of Sodom is just a piece of ancient history. But if today's society no longer cherishes purity and the sacred, what will the outcome be? Will God one day say, "Enough"? The destruction of Sodom came not only from their evil deeds, but from their hardened hearts, their arrogance, and their blindness to the consequences of their actions. When people can no longer see what is sacred, no longer discern what is right, that is when God intervenes. This story reminds us that disregarding the sacred always comes at a price. And so, the most important question the story leaves us: are we wise enough today to recognize and avoid repeating the sins of Sodom? Let us ask ourselves, In this life, how many times have we crossed the boundary of what is right, even just a little? And how many times have we taken the sacred lightly, until we are lost in the darkness and can no longer see the light? God's judgment upon Sodom was harsh, but it was justice. It was not a hasty decision, but the result of centuries of warnings that they stubbornly ignored. Thus, Sodom and Gomorrah became symbols of what happens when sin piles up beyond redemption. Their destruction reminds us of the devastating power of moral decay and the importance of preserving what is sacred and pure. When we look at ourselves, at the society around us, the question arises: are we gradually walking the same path Sodom once did? What values do we truly represent? Do we have the courage to stand up for what is good and sacred? The choice has always been in our hands. Like Lot, we must remain steadfast in our faith, even when the world around us is sinking into depravity. And now we move on to the second great sin that led to the fall of Sodom: pride and arrogance. This was a silent but dangerous kind of pride, which made the people no longer see the moral decline within themselves. Many years after Sodom's destruction, a prophet named Ezekiel reminded us why the city was punished by God. In his book, Ezekiel 16 verse 49, he wrote, "The sin of your sister Sodom was pride, excessive food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy." These words show us clearly. Sodom was a wealthy city, having everything, but they lost the most important things: humility, kindness, and compassion. Pride is very dangerous. It doesn't always show itself outwardly. Often, it quietly creeps in, silently corrupting people and gradually causing society to rot from within. The people of Sodom were self-satisfied with their wealth and comforts. They believed they were superior, untouchable, needing to care for no one else. They had abundant wealth, full storehouses, and leisure time to indulge themselves. But instead of using these to help the poor or glorify God, they focused only on themselves and looked down on others. Pride blinded their conscience, making them forget the values they should have upheld: humility, kindness, and sharing with those weaker than themselves. It's easy to picture such a society: rich, full of abundance, but then arrogant and indifferent, no longer thinking of their responsibility to the community and to God. Today, let us ask, how many times have we seen this silent pride take root in our own society? When life is smooth, when blessings surround us, it's easy for people to forget the one who gave them those blessings. In times of plenty, we easily think that all we have is by our own efforts, that we need no one, not even God. But the Bible constantly warns of the danger of such thinking. Remember ancient Babylon. Because of pride, they thought they were everything, that no one could touch them. Isaiah 47 verse 8 says, "You say, 'I am, and there is no one besides me. I shall not sit as a widow or know the loss of children.' Yet in a single night, that mighty Babylon fell completely, just as God had said. The same happened to Egypt, a land once proud of its strength and wealth, but brought low by the hand of God. Even the great king Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had to endure years of madness, until at last he humbly acknowledged God's absolute power. Pride creeps in so cleverly. It inflates the human ego, making us believe we can be self-sufficient, decide everything without God. The false sense of being invincible is the most dangerous thing, because it draws people away from God and into destruction without them realizing it. Looking at history, looking at the world today, I feel all the more that humility before God, gratitude for what we have, is truly the foundation that keeps both individuals and communities strong. As the people of Sodom grew more and more arrogant, they began to believe they could not be judged, that they stood above any punishment from God. The saddest thing about pride is that it blinds people to the emptiness in their own souls. The people of Sodom thought they had everything: wealth, status, worldly pleasures. But in truth, they were utterly bankrupt in spirit. They no longer saw their deepest need, to need God, to need His guidance and mercy. When we put all our trust in temporary wealth and comforts, we risk becoming like Sodom, blinded by pride, self-satisfied, and gradually losing our way. Let us ask ourselves, how much have we let pride shape our lives? Do we still trust in God's care, or rely only on our abilities and possessions? The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is a powerful reminder. Pride, whether silent or blatant, leads to ruin. The people of Sodom thought they could not be touched. But God's judgment came swiftly, and their fate is a costly lesson for all generations. I believe that only by being awake, humble, and returning to God can we avoid the mistakes that Sodom made. This is not just a story of the past. It still shines a light on our present reality. Pride always leads to destruction, and God will humble those who refuse to acknowledge their dependence on His power. Are we being vigilant about this? Are we humble enough to admit that without God, we are nothing? Or are we, like Sodom, drawing near to spiritual emptiness while thinking we are full? And now we come to the third great sin of Sodom, the lack of hospitality. This was one of the reasons the city was destroyed by God. In ancient society, hospitality was not just courtesy or a kind gesture. It was a sacred duty, deeply embedded in the foundation of culture and way of life. When a stranger entered the town, people had the responsibility to provide food, water, shelter, and protection. This was not just an obligation, but a way to show compassion and care for the vulnerable. Hospitality was a mirror reflecting the compassion of a community. It showed that they respected the values God wanted humanity to uphold: love and protection for one another. But sadly, Sodom had completely lost this, and that was part of the reason the city suffered such a severe fate. In the Bible, welcoming a stranger was not just politeness. It was an act of respect because sometimes the stranger was a guest sent by God. The presence of the divine could appear in the form of a traveler. But in Sodom, the opposite happened. When two angels disguised as humans entered the city, they were not welcomed but became targets of violence. The people of Sodom, from young to old, gathered outside Lot's house. Instead of protecting the guests, they pressured him to hand them over. Their intention came not from hospitality. They sought to harm, abuse, and humiliate the innocent guests. A meeting that should have been peaceful turned into a night of horror. They not only failed in their sacred duty, but committed a profound sin, betraying the values God taught about love and protection for the vulnerable. Hospitality reflected God's own kindness. He is the one who always opens His arms to welcome and protect those in need. In the Bible, as written in Hebrews 13 verse 2, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." Sodom rejected this sacred duty and bore the consequences. This story reminds us of the lasting value of hospitality and the consequences of turning away from what God wants humanity to uphold. Welcoming strangers is not just courtesy but a sacred obligation. It is a way to respect others as if they are guests sent by God. Often, the presence of the divine appears in the form of a stranger. In Sodom, everything went in the opposite direction. When two angels disguised as strangers entered the city, the people of Sodom did not welcome them. Sodom's rejection of hospitality became proof of their deep fall, and part of the reason for the destruction they suffered. When the people treated the guests violently, it was not just an insult to moral and cultural standards, but a direct betrayal of what God taught about how people should treat one another. This was not merely a lack of courtesy. It was a rejection of the loving and caring nature that God wants humanity to reflect. God values hospitality because it clearly reflects His love and care for everyone. A nation that fails this test loses the ability to reflect God's image in the world. In modern society, we sometimes forget the true value of hospitality. Many close their hearts to strangers, hesitant to reach out and help. Yet the way we treat others, especially the vulnerable or strangers, is the measure of our heart and our faith. In a society filled with division, suspicion, and judgment, opening our hearts in hospitality is not just kindness, but a reflection of God's heart. The people of Sodom failed completely in this test. They not only refused to welcome, but attacked and humiliated those who should have been protected. And that choice sealed their fate: destruction. In truth, the rejection of hospitality by the people of Sodom was not just an accidental act. It was a reflection of souls that had grown cold, losing care and compassion. Each time we close our hearts and fail to welcome a stranger, we may not realize it, But we are moving away from God's teaching, to love others as He loves us. So what about us today? When we face strangers, the marginalized, or those different from us, what attitude will we choose? Will we be ready to smile at them, extend a helping hand, or will we shut the door, thinking only of our own comfort and safety, forgetting the suffering of others? The lesson from Sodom poses a great question. How do we respond to those in need of shelter and love? The reality today is that many still live in hardship and loneliness. The ancient story urges us not only to think, but to act with love and kindness. Are we opening our hearts to others, or are we gradually closing ourselves off from the world? Does our heart still reflect God's kindness, or has indifference, like in Sodom, taken over? The fourth great sin that led to the fall of Sodom was the oppression of the poor and ignoring the needy. This was not just a momentary act of indifference, but an attitude deeply ingrained in their society. The prophet Ezekiel emphasized this failure. He said, "This was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy." Ezekiel 16 verse 49. These words speak not only of Sodom's material abundance, but accuse them of turning a blind eye to those truly in need of compassion. Throughout the Bible, God reminds us that He loves the poor, the oppressed, and the forgotten. He instructed His people, share with the hungry, protect the widow, and care for the orphan. Isaiah 1 verse 17. These are not fleeting commands or meant for a specific time. They are the basic foundation of the kingdom of God, the way He wants humanity to reflect His loving heart in this life. God's justice and mercy always go hand in hand. He desires that we care for and uplift the weak, those who cannot care for themselves. But in Sodom, this was forgotten. The people lived in wealth with abundant food and possessions, more than enough to share. Yet they chose to close their hearts, refusing to help those in need. It was not accidental. They deliberately chose comfort while ignoring the suffering around them. That indifference was not a small mistake, but a cold, selfish choice. That heartlessness made God angry, because when we turn our backs on the poor and weak, we also turn our backs on God, who always sides with the abandoned and oppressed. This is not just a story of a few individuals' faults. It is the collapse of an entire society. God did not just warn individuals but called the whole community to account for living unjustly, for neglecting mercy, and letting the poor suffer while they enjoyed wealth. Throughout history, we see this clearly in Israel and many other nations. Whenever they oppressed the poor or turned from justice, God sent prophets to warn them. Ezekiel 22 verse 29 says, God strongly condemned the leaders of Israel because they exploited and oppressed the poor, those who could not defend themselves. Similar judgments fell on nations like Edom, Tyre, and many others for not heeding the cries of the weak. Today, we also witness a world full of poverty, deprivation, and injustice. How many people need shelter, a meal, medical care, and how often have we, who are able, chosen silence, ignoring their suffering? Every time we are indifferent and fail to act, we repeat Sodom's mistake. We become complicit in lovelessness and lack of compassion. Let's reflect. Does the way we live reflect God's heart of justice and mercy? The people of Sodom had surplus wealth and the means to help, but they chose to turn away from those who needed saving. They lived in wealth and abundance while others suffered and lacked. It's sad to realize that today, we might be following that same path. How often do we see injustice yet choose silence? How often do we become part of a system that maintains injustice? God still calls us. Live with a nobler heart, care for the poor and oppressed. Be the embodiment of mercy and justice in this world. Reading this, ask yourself, what have you done to support those in trouble? Does your way of life reflect God's righteousness? Are you ready to open your heart to the weak, or has fear or selfishness closed it? The story of Sodom is not just a tragedy of the distant past. It still echoes as a wake-up call for all of us today. The fifth and final sin that sealed Sodom and Gomorrah's fate was rebellion against God and refusal to repent. This was not simply about making a few mistakes in life. It was a public challenge to the Creator. The people of Sodom did not sin out of weakness or ignorance. They deliberately chose wrong, took pride in their sinful acts, and had no intention of changing. There was no remorse in their hearts. They stubbornly refused every call to return to righteousness. Perhaps this hardness of heart and defiant attitude hurt God most. God, rich in mercy, patiently gave them time and warned them many times. He even listened to Abraham's plea, agreeing to spare the city if just 10 righteous people could be found. But sadly, not even a small group meeting that standard could be found. The city was so steeped in sin that not a few good people remained. This was not just the failure of individuals but the complete moral collapse of an entire society. A community had strayed so far from righteousness that destruction became inevitable. This story forces us to reflect. Is integrity still upheld in our society today? Are we becoming like Sodom, as hearts grow harder against God's call? Even Lot, who lived among the people of Sodom, tried his best to warn his sons-in-law. He pleaded with them to leave the city before disaster struck. But instead of listening, Lot's sons-in-law mocked him. They thought the warning was ridiculous, not worth paying attention to. In their eyes, nothing serious was about to happen. They ignored their final chance to change, the chance to escape a tragic fate. Today, we often witness people dismissing warnings, mocking the idea of judgment, and thinking that life will remain peaceful as it is, despite all signs calling for awakening. The problem wasn't just individual. It was an entire community that hardened its heart against God's call for repentance. Even when God's angels appeared before them, they still refused to step back or change. They continued to plunge into sin, lost in darkness, unable or unwilling to see the light of truth right before them. This is what broke God's heart. For God, full of patience and mercy, had given them so many chances to turn back. But when they rejected everything, refusing to change despite being warned time and again, judgment became inevitable. Then fire and brimstone rained down from heaven, consuming everything. The cities that once brimmed with life, once echoed with children's laughter, the warmth of homes, the voices of a thriving community, were now nothing but smoking ashes. Today, does God still give us such opportunities? Every day we wake up is a new opportunity to return to Him, to leave wrong paths behind and turn our hearts toward the light. Yet how many times have we wasted those opportunities? How often have we ignored the warning signs, telling ourselves we have plenty of time, that consequences are far off, or that we will not have to bear them? The story of Sodom and Gomorrah reminds us that a time will come when warnings stop, when the door of mercy closes and judgment arrives. When Lot and his family fled the city, the angel gave them clear instructions. Do not look back. Run to save your lives. That message was simple but powerful. Escape destruction. Do not cling to a sinful past. But as the family fled, something heartbreaking happened. Lot's wife, though warned, turned back to look at the city. In her heart, she still longed for the old life, still clung to the sinful past. And in that moment, she became a pillar of salt. Her fate is a bitter reminder to us all. Even when God grants us a chance at deliverance, if we keep longing for what we should leave behind, consequences will follow. When Lot's wife looked back, she was longing for the very things that had led the city to ruin. Her story reminds us, repentance is not just about outward actions but about freeing the heart from attachment to sin. In daily life, how often do we feel torn between the old life God calls us to leave and the better life He offers? How often do we still cling to the past even knowing God wants us to move forward? The image of Lot's wife is a wake-up call. Her failure was not that she couldn't run, but that she couldn't let go of what she should have left behind. God had opened a new path for her, but she could not fully step into it. This is the greatest tragedy of rebellion. The final act of the people of Sodom, refusing to repent despite clear warnings, is what led to their destruction. God's patience finally ended, and then judgment was carried out. Fire and brimstone from heaven completely destroyed the once mighty cities. But the greatest tragedy was not the external destruction, but the death within the souls of those who refused to hear God's call. The question for us today remains: will we listen to God's warning? Will we dare to abandon the rebellion in our hearts? Or will we, like Sodom, ignore every warning until it's too late? We still witness today a society breaking moral boundaries, celebrating what goes against God's plan for humanity. There remains the pride that makes people deceive themselves into thinking they don't need God, that they can steer their lives without His guidance. We still easily close our hearts, indifferent to strangers, refusing to open our doors and share kindness, forgetting that hospitality reflects God's love. The poor, the vulnerable, and those in need are still around us every day. Yet many times we turn a blind eye, forgetting that God deeply cares for these people. And the saddest part is that many still live in rebellion, turning their backs on God's loving call to repentance. But remember, God does not change. He is still loving, and still desires to save those willing to return to Him. And though God's justice will surely come, His mercy remains wide open for those who truly return to Him. Just as He once sent angels to warn the people of Sodom, today He continues to remind us, giving us opportunities to leave the wrong path. Before the fire fell to consume Sodom, God gave them time, opened opportunities, but they rejected them all. And the lesson here is clear. God is full of patience, but that patience does not last forever. One day, His justice will be done, but if we repent, His mercy is ready to receive us. After that terrible destruction, Lot and his daughters found refuge in a small town called Zoar. By God's mercy, Zoar was spared from judgment, and it became their temporary shelter. Genesis 19 verse 22. But that peace did not last long. Lot became afraid, fearing that Zoar might also suffer the same fate as Sodom. So he took his family up into the mountains and lived in a cave to avoid danger. Genesis 19 verse 30. What seemed like the beginning of peace and recovery actually opened a new tragedy. In loneliness and fear, Lot's daughters worried that their family line would come to an end forever. In their desperation, they made a plan. They got their father drunk and lay with him to preserve their lineage. A plan born of fear that led to a sorrowful chapter in Lot's family story. This is not just a story of escape and survival. It is a serious reminder of what can happen when people do not fully abandon what is tied to sin, even after being saved. From that tragic act, 2 children were born, Moab and Ben-Ammi. These children later became the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, nations that became lifelong enemies of Israel. Genesis 19 verses 36 to 38. This story speaks not only of moral failure but clearly reflects the consequences of sin. Consequences that can cling to people even after they have been delivered. Though Lot and his daughters were spared from the terrifying destruction of Sodom, the emotional wounds, fears, and moral failures continued to weigh heavily on them. This is a warning that even after God reaches out in salvation, we can still stumble if we continue to cling to a sinful past or let fear lead us instead of faith. Sadly, the Bible does not clearly record Lot's feelings or reaction after that painful event. We can only imagine that he carried deep sorrow, perhaps regret and disappointment over himself and what had happened. Though Lot was saved from Sodom's destruction by God, it is clear he did not completely change. The psychological scars and consequences of his family's sin continued to haunt and affect his life. This story reminds us of an important truth. Being saved from destruction is not enough to completely erase the consequences of sin. God's forgiveness is the beginning, but true healing and transformation must come from a change of heart. The salvation God offers is not just to spare us from punishment. It is an invitation to live a new life, a life that leaves behind sinful pasts, releases fear, and lets go of old habits to truly walk in faith. For if our hearts still carry unhealed wounds, we can still fall, still be pulled back by the past. Lot's fear and his daughter's moral fall show the inner battles many of us face even after God rescues us from sin. God can open the way for us to escape danger, but we must choose to leave behind the sinful past so that the renewal He wants to bring can take root in our hearts. Have we opened our hearts to receive His work of renewal? God's grace is always ready, but we must truly receive it and allow Him to complete His work in our lives. This story is not meant to frighten anyone, but to awaken us. It invites us to reflect on our lives, our society, and our hearts. I would love to hear your thoughts and feelings after revisiting this story together. Share them because when we reflect together, we can learn from the past and make better choices for the future. If today's message has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share this video so others can also be reminded, and subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey of exploring the Bible and life-changing lessons. Don't let this moment pass by without meaning. Seize this opportunity to reflect, to return, and to seek God's mercy while the door of grace is still open. God calls us to live by His truth, to let His mercy shape and transform us into the people He desires us to be. Let us learn from the lesson of the past. Do not let it repeat in our lives. Decide today that we will return to God, live meaningfully, and walk firmly on the path He has set for us. Time is precious. Use it wisely so that when we look back, we have no regrets, but see that we have lived according to what God desires. December 25th each year, Christmas, is also the day we commemorate the birth of Jesus Christ. However, none of the Gospels actually mention this specific date. So why do we celebrate on this day? And more importantly, when was Jesus really born? To find the answer, let's take a look at the carefully recorded details in the Holy Scriptures. There are 7 key facts to consider, and when pieced together, they provide a clearer picture of Jesus' birth. Today, I invite you to open this sacred book with me, to study and uncover truths preserved for over 2,000 years. Before we begin, leave your guess in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to not miss future videos. The first clue we find is in the Gospel of Luke, referring to the famous census at that time. During the reign of Caesar Augustus, he ordered a massive empire-wide census. This is considered the first census conducted while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Everyone had to return to their hometown to register and declare their information by imperial order. The Romans were known for precision and control. They used censuses like this to govern, collect taxes, and ensure no one escaped their system. These censuses weren't just paperwork. They were tools to display the empire's power, forcing even the lowest to submit. But the amazing thing is, while Augustus believed he was in control, it was God who was using these events to fulfill His divine plan. This census inadvertently caused thousands to travel, including a small family carrying the Savior of the world. Joseph, of the lineage of David, had to return to Bethlehem with Mary, who was pregnant with Jesus, just as the old prophecy had written. The journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem was about 80 miles, a tough trip even for the healthy. For Mary, heavily pregnant, the journey was especially exhausting and difficult. What they may have seen as a burden was actually a part of God's larger plan. Over 700 years earlier, the prophet Micah declared, "But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come a ruler for Israel." Through the Roman emperor's decree, this prophecy was fulfilled when Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Additionally, there's another important detail many overlook: the weather conditions in Judea at that time. Winter in that region is cold and damp, not suitable for long travel or conducting a census. This suggests that Jesus may not have been born in the middle of winter, as commonly believed. Logically, this census likely took place in spring or fall, when the weather was milder and travel was easier. Moreover, these times coincided with major gatherings in the Jewish calendar, like harvest season or large festivals. These were occasions when people were already used to traveling and gathering in large numbers. Remarkably, the very tool of imperial control became the means by which God carried out His plan. Caesar Augustus, intending to manage his vast empire, unwittingly set the stage for the most significant event in human history, the birth of the Messiah. This census was not a coincidence, but God's way of ensuring His Son was born in the right place, at the right time as foretold. Joseph and Mary had no idea that every step toward Bethlehem was fulfilling ancient prophecy. Caesar Augustus, too, was unaware that his decree was part of a divine, preordained plan. Through this, we clearly see how God arranges historical events, even the most mundane, to fulfill His purposes. Jesus wasn't born in a place chosen by man, but in one divinely appointed from the beginning. While the Roman Empire controlled every aspect of life, God's supreme power quietly moved His plan forward. This census reminds us that even when man thinks he is in charge, a divine plan is unfolding in perfect detail. From this census, we understand that Jesus was likely not born in winter, a time not ideal for travel or administrative tasks. A more fitting time would be spring or fall, when weather conditions allowed for easier movement and gatherings. Now, let's move on to the second clue, which involves the father of John the Baptist. This clue begins with an important detail. Zechariah, John's father, was a priest in the division of Abijah. One day, while he was burning incense in the temple, an angel appeared to him with news. His wife Elizabeth, though old and barren, would bear a child. That child would be John the Baptist, the one who would go before and prepare the way for the Messiah. This is where it gets interesting, because the timing of this event gives us a surprising clue to estimate the birth of Jesus. Zechariah's temple service is one of the most important clues to determining when Jesus was born. According to the Gospel of Luke, during the reign of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah, from the division of Abijah. When it was the turn of the Abijah division to serve in the temple, Zechariah was ministering before the Lord, as was customary. The priests of Israel were divided into 24 divisions, each serving 1 week twice a year, as recorded in 1 Chronicles 24. Zechariah's division was the 8th, which typically served around May or June. During this time of service, the angel Gabriel appeared to Zechariah and told him that his wife Elizabeth would conceive. Later, Luke chapter 1 says that 6 months after Elizabeth conceived, the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary and told her she would be the mother of Jesus. This suggests that Mary conceived around November or December. Adding 9 months of pregnancy, Jesus was likely born around September or October. Interestingly, this time frame coincides with the Feast of Tabernacles, one of the most significant Jewish festivals. The Feast of Tabernacles was held to commemorate God's presence among the Israelites during their wilderness journey. It's possible that Jesus, called Emmanuel, meaning God with us, was born during this very festival. This is a meaningful thought because it ties Jesus' birth to the Jewish calendar and to deep theological symbolism, as if every detail had been part of God's meticulous plan from the beginning. The story of Zechariah may seem isolated at first, but it's actually a crucial part of the grand picture God was painting. Every word in the Bible has meaning and is placed precisely. Nothing is random. This small detail further illustrates God's perfect plan, leaving no room for error, and it gives us yet another clue linking Jesus' birth to an important Jewish festival. The third clue relates to the Feast of Tabernacles and the surprising connection between Jesus' birth and Jewish festivals. The Israelites lived by a calendar full of holidays, not just to remember their history, but to reflect on greater truths, like the arrival of the Messiah. Each of these festivals carried deep spiritual meaning, and some remarkably align with possible dates for Jesus' birth. As we've seen, Jesus may have been born during the Feast of Tabernacles, one of the holiest events in the Jewish calendar. The Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, commemorates the time when God dwelled among the Israelites in tents during their journey out of Egypt. This festival takes place in autumn, around September or October, as a time of joy, gratitude, and reflection on God's presence. There is another Bible verse that supports this theory. In the first chapter of the Gospel of John, we read, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." What's fascinating is that in the original Greek, the word dwelt can also be translated as tabernacled. So what better time for God to truly dwell among His people than during the Feast of Tabernacles? Moreover, Jewish festivals are not only commemorations of the past, but also prophetic symbols of future events. For example, Passover is associated with the death of Jesus, who is called the Lamb of God. Pentecost coincided with the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. If these major events aligned with Jewish festivals, it's logical to think that Jesus' birth might align with a significant feast as well. Another festival possibly related to Jesus' birth is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, also held in the fall. It marks a new beginning and invites people to reflect on God's kingship. The sound of the shofar during this time calls for repentance and proclaims God's sovereignty, a fitting setting for the birth of the King of Kings. When Jesus came into the world, He ushered in a new era, a new covenant and a new hope for all humanity. Everything in God's plan was perfectly arranged. like a symphony where every note is in its rightful place. The idea that Jesus' birth coincided with a Jewish festival shows this was no random event. This event is closely tied to the historical tradition and spiritual expectations of the people of Israel. However, we need to consider two other clues in the Bible related to the time after Mary gave birth to Jesus. The fourth clue involves the shepherds. In the Gospel of Luke, there is an important detail about the night Jesus was born that we may have heard but not deeply thought about. The scripture says, "There were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified." This story offers a key clue to help us better understand the season in which Jesus was born. It was nighttime, and the shepherds were out in the fields watching their flocks under the starry skies of Judea. December in this region is typically cold, with damp nights and extended rain. This is the time when shepherds usually look for shelter for their flocks, avoiding open fields. Therefore, the idea of shepherds staying outside in winter to watch over their flocks doesn't align with local customs or weather conditions. This detail pushes us to consider another season of the year, possibly spring, summer, or fall. Spring is lambing season, the weather is mild, and nights are cool but not too harsh. Summer nights are warm, and shepherds often lead their flocks out to enjoy the cooler air after hot days. In fall, during harvest time, shepherds still keep their flocks out in the fields thanks to the still moderate weather. In winter, however, nighttime grazing is uncommon and quite challenging. What's fascinating is that such a small story detail can reveal an important truth about the timing of Jesus' birth. If the shepherds were out in the fields watching their flocks, it strongly suggests Jesus was unlikely born in December. But there is another clue that appears on the night Jesus was born: the Star of Bethlehem. The Star of Bethlehem is one of the most mysterious and captivating elements of the Nativity story. In Matthew chapter 2, we read that after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose." But what exactly was this star? Was it a natural phenomenon, a divine sign, or perhaps both? Either way, the star marked the exact time when the heavens announced that something extraordinary had taken place on Earth. To shed light on this mystery, many have tried to identify astronomical events that may have occurred at that time. One of the most common theories about the Star of Bethlehem is that it was a planetary conjunction. This phenomenon happens when two planets, such as Jupiter and Saturn, align in the sky to form a bright point of light. According to astronomical calculations, such a conjunction occurred around 7 BC, approximately when Jesus is believed to have been born. Another theory suggests the star could have been a nova or supernova, an exploding star that shines brightly for weeks or months, enough to draw attention from anyone watching the sky. However, to this day, there are no historical records confirming such an astronomical event at that time. Some believe the star may have been a comet, a celestial body moving through the sky, which seemed to lead the wise men on their journey. However, at that time, comets were usually seen as bad omens, not symbols of hope, so it's unlikely that the Star of Bethlehem was a comet. What makes the story even more fascinating is that the star didn't just appear for observation. It had a purpose: to guide the wise men. The wise men didn't just see the star. They followed it until they arrived at the exact place where Jesus was born. This shows that the Star of Bethlehem wasn't just a natural phenomenon, but a special sign used by God to announce the birth of his Son. Most importantly, the star wasn't merely a sign in the sky. It was a message to all humanity: the Messiah has arrived. Yet, the religious leaders in Jerusalem ignored the prophetic scriptures about the Messiah. While this very sign caught King Herod's attention, when the wise men asked Herod about the child, they unintentionally alerted him to the existence of the Savior. From that moment, Herod issued one of his most brutal decrees, and this decree gives us another clue about Jesus' birth. The sixth clue involves King Herod and the massacre of the innocents, one of the cruelest events associated with Jesus' birth. According to the book of Matthew, the Magi followed the star to Jerusalem, assuming the newborn king would be in Herod's palace. They asked Herod, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." Herod told them, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After leaving Jerusalem, the wise men were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. When Herod realized he had been deceived by the wise men, he was furious and ordered the slaughter of all male children aged 2 and under in Bethlehem. Though cruel and inhumane, Herod's decree gives us a significant clue about the timing of Jesus' birth. From this detail, we can estimate a clearer time frame for Jesus' birth. We know that Herod died in 4 BC, meaning the massacre must have occurred shortly before that. If Jesus was under 2 years old at the time, he was likely born between 6 and 4 BC. The historical context supports this. Herod was notorious for his paranoia and brutality, even killing his own family members to secure his throne. When he heard of a new king's birth, his reaction was exactly as expected: eliminate any threat, no matter how innocent. But what Herod didn't know was that this king had not come to take an earthly throne, but to establish a heavenly kingdom no man could stop. Herod's plan failed because Joseph was warned by an angel in a dream and fled with Mary and Jesus to Egypt. This escape not only saved the Savior, but also fulfilled another prophecy. "Out of Egypt I called my son." The scripture says, "When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son." Even the tears of the mothers in Bethlehem had been foretold by the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah wrote, "A voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and great weeping, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." Astonishingly, even in the darkness of the massacre, God's plan was perfectly fulfilled. Nothing could stop it. The massacre of the innocents highlights the stark contrast between human cruelty and God's perfect plan. Herod tried to use death to stop life, not knowing the child he feared most would one day conquer death itself. And the final clue to Jesus' birth is revealed through the moment he began his public ministry. According to Luke chapter 3, Jesus was about 30 years old when he began preaching. This is a key detail, not just a biographical note. In fact, this detail helps us pinpoint his birth by counting backward from the start of his ministry. Jesus began his ministry in a specific historical context, during the reign of Emperor Tiberius Caesar. Luke notes that this happened in the 15th year of Tiberius' reign, which historians place around AD 29 or 30. If Jesus was about 30 years old at that time, this places his birth somewhere between 6 and 4 BC. This time frame aligns with the period when Herod the Great was still alive, confirming the Bible's account that Jesus was born during Herod's reign. The connection between these historical and biblical details gives us a strong clue about when the Savior entered the world. But why did Jesus begin his ministry at around age 30? That number is not random. In Jewish tradition, 30 was a significant age, the minimum age for a priest to begin service in the temple, according to Numbers chapter 4. It was also the age when a man was considered fully mature and capable of taking on public and spiritual responsibility. Jesus, though not from the tribe of Levi, presented himself as the eternal high priest, beginning a ministry that would not only change history but open the way of salvation for all humanity. The start of his ministry marked a turning point and invites us to reflect on the 30 silent years he spent in Nazareth. What happened during those 30 years, the years of preparation for his great mission? While the Bible is mostly silent about Jesus' first 30 years, we can imagine them as years of preparation, obedience, and growth. Those years were not wasted. They were the perfect time for Jesus to be fully ready to begin his mission at the appointed moment. Now, let us review the 7 clues that help determine the birth of Jesus. Clue number 1. The conception of John the Baptist occurred around June 6 BC, suggesting Jesus was conceived about 6 months later, around December. This would place Jesus' birth around September or October 5 BC, assuming a full 9-month pregnancy. Clue number 2. The theory that the Star of Bethlehem was a planetary conjunction or astronomical event fits with a date around 6 or 5 BC. Clue number 3. The massacre of infants occurred before Herod's death in 4 BC, confirming that Jesus was born before then. Clue number 4. Jesus began his ministry around AD 28 at about 30 years old, supporting a birth date between 6 and 4 BC. Clue number 5. The shepherds being out in the fields rules out December, since shepherds didn't keep flocks outside during the winter. Clue number 6. The census by Caesar Augustus would have likely taken place in autumn, a more practical season for travel. Clue number 7. The Gospel of John mentions, "The Word dwelt among us," suggesting a connection to the Feast of Tabernacles in September or October. All this evidence points to Jesus being born in September or October of a year before the Common Era, aligning perfectly with historical events and biblical prophecies. The question then arises,